I got the call on a Tuesday afternoon. My phone lit up with the familiar company logo, but it was not the usual check-in from production. It was Janet, our head secretary, her voice trembling as she informed me I had been fired effective immediately. 7 years of blood and sweat poured into saving my father's failing company while my brother Jackson spent his time partying and wasting money. Now he had fired me, his own flesh and blood, who turned the business around. I still remember Dad's funeral like it was yesterday. If you are going through something similar right now, comment below where you are watching from and subscribe to see how I finally got justice against my ungrateful brother. My father, Jonathan Williams, built Williams Manufacturing from nothing. A self-made man who immigrated to Detroit in the 70s, he started making automotive parts in a tiny garage and grew it into a respectable mid-sized company with over 200 employees. Growing up, I watched him leave before sunrise and return after dinner, his hands permanently stained with engine grease despite his executive title. Jackson was 5 years older than me, the firstborn son. Mom doted on him before she passed away from cancer when I was 10. He was her golden child, always getting his way and never facing consequences for his actions. While I spent weekends learning the business from the ground up, Jackson was out with friends, spending money and generally acting like the heir to a fortune much larger than ours actually was. "Braxton, you work too hard," he would tell me, when I would skip parties to study or help at the factory. "Nobody will remember your perfect grades when you are dead." This became his mantra, his excuse for dropping out of college after 2 failed years while I went on to get my MBA from Michigan with honors. Dad never played favorites, at least not obviously. He was tough on both of us, but in different ways. He pushed Jackson to be more responsible, to take interest in the legacy being built for him. With me, he was demanding of excellence, never quite acknowledging when I exceeded expectations because that was simply what he believed I was capable of. By the time I graduated business school at 25, Williams Manufacturing was in trouble. Foreign competition with cheaper labor costs, outdated production methods, and 3 consecutive years of losses had my father looking older than his 64 years. I came home eager to implement what I had learned to modernize operations and save the company. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, son," Dad said when I presented my ideas. "But this business survived for 30 years on my methods. We just need to weather this storm." I took a position as operations manager anyway, working alongside my father, while Jackson held a vague business development title that seemed to involve golf outings with potential clients, but few actual contracts. Despite the tension, I still believed both of us together could turn things around when the time came. That time arrived sooner than anyone expected. Dad collapsed one morning on the factory floor. Heart attack, massive and sudden. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. The entire company attended his funeral, hundreds of people whose livelihoods depended on what would happen next. The reading of the will left everyone shocked. Dad split the company 50-50 between Jackson and me, but with a twist that made my stomach drop. Jackson would be chief executive officer. I would be chief operations officer. My older brother, who had barely set foot in the office more than once a week, would run the company I had been preparing my entire life to lead. Dad always knew what he was doing, our family attorney explained when I questioned the decision privately. He believed in balancing your operational skills with your brother's people skills. People skills. That was one way to describe how Jackson charmed his way through life without ever facing consequences. I wanted to fight it to contest the will, but something stopped me. Respect for my father, perhaps, or the desire to avoid a public family feud while the company teetered on the brink. So I accepted my position and doubled down on saving the company. While Jackson took the corner office and immediately redecorated it to the tune of $30,000, I worked directly with our engineers on the factory floor. I stayed until midnight, analyzing our production inefficiencies, developed new quality control measures, and personally called customers who had been leaving us for competitors. Jackson, meanwhile, showed up around 10 most mornings, left by 3, and used the company credit card for client entertainment that somehow always happened at the newest nightclubs or on his boat. When I confronted him about his spending, he dismissed my concerns. Appearances matter.